Hi, this is Naroki5. I am going to be doing this until I die or I find something better to do. So please help me achieve this personal and, I think, noble objective by contributing to my Patreon or Subscribe Star. Link is down below. Every little bit helps. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. This is Naroki5, and I won't call this an emergency episode, but this is an additional episode on top of the one I normally have on Wednesday. This is I will call this one the Best Buy special. Now, I'll have to take you back and just imagine that there's pipe music in the background and medieval music, and I have to take you back in the midst of time, all the way back to April, and a not so young man is sitting at home, and a voice comes from nowhere, and it goes, "Naroki, I am old and faded, and my memory is almost used. You must find one to take my place." And I shudder, and I get down on my knees, and I go, but where do I go? Where do I go, exalted one? You must go to the land of Besteth Buy, where plenty of replacements of me happen. You can go other places, but Best Buy is the one that most people use. You must venture forth bravely to that land and get another portable hard drive. So, putting on my best clothes and my best armor, and of course my wallet, I hop into my car and I voyage through pouring rain, stirring wind, blazing sun, and a few crazy Alberta drivers, and arrive at the land of Best Buy. And when I walk in, hearken to thee. It is so dark in here. But the land of Edmonton has so many white people. Why is it so dark in here? But I didn't think of anything else. I just wanted to get the hard drive, and I got the hard drive. And with my holy quest completed, I returned home and allowed the old portable hard drive to retire in peace, and then proceeded on with my adventures. In the course of my adventures, another notice came, this time from afar, from the United States. A man by the name of James O'Keefe announced via the town crier, "Hear ye, hear ye! Besteth Buy is no longer allowing white people to become managers within their store. More on the next show." And I was like, and then Rhyrcyn notified Naroki, and he said, we must just have this topic for the next show. And we did. And then, as I was sitting at home, Naroki, I decided that I had to venture forth to gather more information about this heresy, this terrible tragedy. So I ventured to all of the Besteth Buys in Edmonton, and loeth and behold, they were all as darketh and disproportionately representative of the city of Edmonton as the one in South Ed Common. And I thought to myself, this is racism. But I don't know it for sure. So I must get my horse and steed and buggy and venture down to the land of Calgary, where my fair and brave compatriot Rhyrcyn and I shall venture forth to the Besteth Buys in Calgary to do the exact same thing that I was doing in Edmonton. And so we did yesterday. We ventured forth. I took my camera. Rhyrcyn bravely followed along, guarding my rear as we entered all of these Besteth Buys, where people with blue shirts on confronted us and asked us if we actually needed anything, but we didn't, but we pretended that we did. And then we gotteth our information and returned it back to Rhyrcyn's residence. And after we got his gimp suit off the computer, we were actually going to do this Red Pill Nation hangout. But Rookie 5, I myself was tired. Fortunately, Rhyrcyn had a magic elixir called 5-Hour Energy, which he gratefully parted for me, and I drove it back home to Edmonton, where I proceeded to have a good night's sleep and get up. And here we are today doing this brave report of the Red Pill Nation, where we will be discussing the land of Best Buy and its what appears to be very clear racist hiring policies. Now, I've noticed that another brave compatriot from across the ocean has joined us. V, introduce yourself.
Well, you know me. I'm V, host of the Red Pill Hardcore radio show and other various podcasts. And I'm always representing TLBTalk.com, Freedom Speech Social Network. If you're on Facebook and all these other places, well, then guess what? You can stop by and make a profile on TLBTalk.com too. It's, just in case you like freedom of speech. I don't know. Unless you like having a purple dildo given to you by Facebook and Twitter all the time, that's fine. But, you can call the shots when you're on TLB Talk. And yes, I'm here to join these two dime pieces, these couple of loonies of radio hosts here on this show.
It's Toonies. Get it right, buddy. It's Toonies.
It's Toonies. Yes, it's Toonies.
Oh, well, see, that can go with the whole different other pun.
All right. Yep. Thank you very much. And of course, my pen to my teller, my Galahad to my Arthur, Rhyrcyn.
Well, unlike V, I'm not doing anything with any purple dildos. I assure you. No toys.
Well, you're Rhyrcyn. You're the man that covers the rear.
Not yours.
No, just the rookies.
That's more than enough, I assure you. It is more than enough. Anyway, I've been with this Loon E, whatever. He's certainly worth more than $1, but anyway, I've known this guy for too damn long.
Yes, it is too damn long. All right, So anyway, let's bring in a couple of special sponsors for this show. First of all, the Orange Man Bad Company just wasn't quite making enough money out of Orange Man Bad Hand Balm. So Orange Man Bad Co. has come up with a new product. Orange Man Bad Muscle and Joint Relief. Yes, sir. Now you no longer have to worry about certain blisters appearing on your member. Now, if you get suspiciously cases of tendinitis in your hand, your elbow, or your shoulder that you would rather not take to the doctor and discuss how you got them, and the Orange Man Bad Hand Balm isn't doing enough for you, that's right, we have Orange Man Bad Joint and Muscle to take care of those cases of tendinitis, which may or may not have involved you going to the bathroom several times a day to be touching and pleasuring yourself over a certain ex-president. And, of course, we have, in honor of a certain hypocritical individual from the Manosphere who was charging $100 a month for his Manosphere website, the JM Purple Poker. Yes, the JM Purple Poker. Just back for this week. Just remember when you call in to do the secret code, I'm a manly man when you make your order, and you will get the JM Purple Poker, complete with live action photos of when a certain individual by the name of JM was actually using them and was stupid enough to take shots and post them up on the internet. More on that. So what is this? This is a special episode today. This one, well, I mean, I saw the OMG story on YouTube, and we had discussed, I believe it was in April or May, when I went, if in case you didn't get the story, when I went to the Best Buy at South Ed Common in Edmonton to get a hard drive. I walked in there, and there was, and you got to understand, I'm going to have to say that the South Ed Common store in Edmonton is the largest Best Buy in the province. I walked into that store. There was one white person. Now, I'm Native American, so I really don't have a dog in that fight. At the same time, though, right? They weren't just not white; they were all like East Indian. Like, I'm just going to point this out for people who are of Filipino or African American or Native. Oh, there. Oh, by the way, not a single solitary Native American in any of the stores that we hit that I saw at all. But they were all East Indian in that store, except for one person at the front counter. And I didn't think anything of it, but I commented on it. And I have noticed this also, although I haven't done a deep dive on it, I have also noticed this tendency at another store called Staples, although I had decided not. We're going to do one store chain at a time. And at this point, if Staples is engaging in that type of hiring policy, they will find themselves in trouble at some point, as well as will any other corporate chain that is using race-based hiring policies. And I didn't think anything of it until last week when James O'Keefe revealed this story about Best Buy, and of course the CEO of Best Buy scrubbed her social media account. Best Buy went silent, and of course, as it so turns out, Liberty Mutual is using the exact same management training company as Best Buy. So Liberty Mutual has also been getting some flack as well. So they, but I mean, for the most part, though, this was just Best Buy. And we covered it, and I realized that, I couldn't just say from going into one store that this was race-based hiring. So I had to hit all of the stores in Edmonton, and I did the run-through. And the numbers for Edmonton were as follows. Hold on a second. Let me bring it up here. 69 of 101 employees in Edmonton were not white. The overwhelming majority of them were East Indian. I'm going to say probably between 55 and 60%. Now, by the way, I'm going to point this out. Like, Edmonton has I won't say a large African American and Native American and Chinese at Oriental population, but Edmonton does have a larger than for a city of its size, a larger than normal African American population, as opposed to, say, Calgary or Vancouver or any of the other Western cities. There's actually not very well known historical reason for that, and that is the fact that at one point, probably just after slavery, ended, a whole bunch, not a whole bunch, but a significant number of blacks fled the South. And for whatever, and I'm going to guess for, I think, rather obvious reasons, decided that the best place to settle was on the opposite end of the continent. So there's a larger than average African American black population in northern Alberta than you would expect. And that's not something that's very well known. Canada did engage in racism and did eventually shut their doors on it and did start doing things they could to stop encouraging ex-slaves from coming up to Canada. But, that was not before a few thousand of them actually did make the trip. So there was, I think there were 3 or 4, much lower than a representation of the actual population. No Native Americans, no Chinese, no Asians of any kind except for East Indians and whites in Edmonton. That was it. When I hit the last store at Edmonton, I realized it was like, oh, God. I got to go see Rhyrcyn's face. I hope he has enough brains to not go wear his gimp suit when I go to visit him. Fortunately, he did have enough sense to not wear his gimp suit. Thank you very much, Rhyrcyn.
Fuck you.
So we went down to Edmonton. So I drove down to Calgary. This was yesterday. After visiting a friend from high school, we hit all but one of the stores in Calgary. Now, the ratio in Calgary is even more skewed than the one in Edmonton. Here's the difference between Edmonton and Calgary, though, was that it wasn't just, there was a larger than proportion East Indian population, again, but it was more racially mixed. As in, there were more blacks, there were more Hispanic, there was blacks, there was Orientals. That would probably be the catch-all term. There was more of a racial mix. It wasn't just all East Indians, and there were definitely more African Americans working in the stores in the Best Buys down in Calgary. But it actually still came out to around the same thing. Now, Edmonton is about 61% white, and Calgary is about 66% white. So if they were not engaging in race-based hiring, then, like I said, when I did the Calgary stores, it came out to 79 of 109. Now, if that was actually based on actual racial representation, and I mean, you shouldn't really be hiring by racial representation anyway, but there should have been probably somewhere between 60 and 70 people of European ancestry working in the Best Buys, and that just wasn't the case. While it's very clear that whoever is doing the hiring in Edmonton is gauging in a form of nepotism and is clearly being more biased than the woman in Calgary, I think it's fairly safe to say at this point that Best Buy is indeed engaging in race-based hiring on the floor of their store. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to let Rhyrcyn do the commenting, and then V can take up the can follow up with that, and then we can get into round 2 of this. So Rhyrcyn, go right ahead.
All right, don't mind me. As I was saying, don't mind the background noise here. Just man's got to do what a man's got to do because the woman ain't going to do it, which is grocery shopping. Anyway, I have to say, and I'm going to play devil's advocate a bit on this one, is that Alberta being a resource province, energy resource rich, and while the fucking oil patch isn't as busy as it has been in its heyday, it's still employable. So, shall we say, my opinion would be is that most white guys will probably be more inclined to want to go up and wonderful timing, Hiroki. Wonderful timing for me to be doing this. But basically, with Calgary being more of the oil corporate sector than anything else, for the hiring and the like, would be, I would believe, most people here would be looking down on retail, especially electronics retail. Don't get me wrong, it's a necessary evil. But by and large, I've been in it, and I was lucky to have a job that paid me at the time about $45,000. Yeah, it was about that. And but the owner, Min, was pretty good. It was predominantly white guys that were hired. But that could also be racism on his part as well too, or prejudice, because he is Vietnamese. And sorry, B, it's just your demographic really probably won't work for him. If he can avoid it, he will. Anyway, I don't know what to make of this one right now. If this is systemic across the nation, wherever possible. But then again, too, I mean, with my line of work, I deal with a national convenience store chain for testing out their panic button around the neck, shall we say. And they are predominantly East Indian. But I have dealt with some attendants that are Filipino or out east that are more often than not, they're white. So I don't know what to make of this at this point. But again, this would have to be looked at across the board, across the nation. And until that's been concluded, we've got data points as a trend, but that's about it. That's all I got to say.
Okay,
Wow. So I get to bring up the rear this time. All right. Well, when I bring it up, it's a fat one. Yeah, I mean, I approach everything, if I can, I approach things mathematically first, logically, and then I look at social and psychological. Mathematically, having a racial hiring policy that is benefiting the once downtrodden, impoverished, victimized people, I'd say that's a thumbs up. I mean, walking into a place and seeing an entire building of a race that's not yours. Ooh, wow. I mean, you're describing my life since the day I was born. So, yeah, why not mix it up a little bit?
Yeah, that would be likewise for me as well, but continue.
Yeah, so, again, I look at this mathematically. You have, let's say, a negative one. You have white people employing only white people and, giving the dirt jobs to what they consider lower class people. That's a racist hiring policy. Okay, that's after slavery. That's what the country, Canada and the U.S. was built upon that negative racist policy. But to go to zero and say, "Oh, we'll hire everybody," well, that's wishful thinking. It's not gonna. It's not actually helping. It hasn't helped uh, because you still have the 70-year-old, 60-year-old, 50-year-old white men still in charge, and old habits die hard. So to have on the opposite side of that zero a +1, okay, let's favor hiring of this people, this race. You have that positive policy that overturns any bias of any previous administration or administration of any company or department of any institution. Okay, -1 plus 0 is still -1. However, -1 plus +1, that equals 0. It's called balance. So if there needs to be a radical change in policy to correct the system and correct society, then I'm all for it. Okay? There's so many people that complain about affirmative action, and these are people who of course would be against any kind of reparations or anything like that. Oh, we work for it. No, you actually really didn't. You 400 years of your world just being supported by everybody else. But now that you have a generation or two into actually working for a job that you have to earn, doesn't make everything equal. There's so many resources, so many people have been killed and wiped out just so that you can have your Starbucks coffee today. Now, being a person of color myself, I can't even describe to you how hard it is. I mean, most of my life, I've owned my own business and made my own money because, unhireable. How many times have I been fired because I have a manager who happens to be an ex-cop, do everything he could to fire me? That's happened to me like 3 times. So when you have systemic racism that, of course, bleeds into everything when you deal with authority or any kind of institution that has a power structure, it's bled into it. So of course it's got to be combated. It's got to be fixed. Something has to be done. I mean, I should not have gone through. And a person of the modern era, I'm telling you, I still have faced wild discrimination. I've owned my own businesses since, hell, I started my first business when I was 12, and I still own my own businesses to this day. Working underneath somebody else, it just didn't work. Didn't matter how hard of a worker I was. It didn't matter if I was super charismatic, try to be kept around so people liked me, or if I said nothing and kept to myself. It did not matter. Why? Because I made white people uncomfortable. White people would rather work around other white people. That's a fact. So we need a bit of a culture shock, a bit of re-education. We need to bleed out old, horrible traditions. It is the right direction for humanity, I think. So that's how I feel about that. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, yeah, the Arabs had a huge slave trade going, but we're not here to discuss slavery. Um, but let's just, I mean, this whole system, this system that this management company, what the hell? Rhyrcyn had to duck out for a moment. Maybe he had to do something. Though the whole system of patriarchal privilege, this is this ongoing. In particular, it falls into patriarchy theory, which somehow goes along the lines of if a white man is a CEO, somehow the other X hundred plus million white males in society all just magically have their standard of living raised because there's a white man that's a CEO somewhere, which is not true. I know a lot of people who are white who come from some very dirt poor backgrounds that did not have realistically a lot of any type of advantages, at least not financially anyway. A lot of the lower classes, regardless of regardless of what race they are, the rate of crime is pretty consistent across the board. So I'm going to have to say there's probably more economics than anything else. The issue here is the fact that there is this somehow perceived idea that because you're white, and I make jokes about this, that you get $60 skillion and a iridium, to quote Rhyrcyn yesterday, iridium plated shitter just for being born a white male, and that does not happen. Because I checked, that's what I was sneaking into your bathroom for there when I went over to your place yesterday. It wasn't an iridium coated toilet, Rhyrcyn. No, he does not. I have yet to find one in the house of any white family that I've gone into. The as a whole, yeah, European whites are doing better, but you want to know the race that's actually doing the best economically in North America right now? I'll give you a hint. It's not the whites. It's the East Indians, or the population from India, and then it's the Chinese. Actually, whites people of European ancestry barely make the top 5. So that myth that whites are somehow have a foot up on everybody else in the country just by being born white. I mean, yeah, okay, they don't commit as much crime, but I mean, for instance, having worked as loss prevention for a few years, a disproportionate. I mean, I had to take. We were told specifically when I got hired that we were not supposed to use the person's race as a means to arrest people. I'm going to say of all the captures that I got, though, at least half were of Native Americans. Which are my folks. I've been accused of being an apple, for instance, because I don't necessarily agree with all of the with all of the rhetoric that's been going around with that. Incidentally, they have done a third excavation, just so you know, because we might be covering this on Wednesday or next Wednesday. the show after the one, not this one, but the next one. They've done another excavation on a church basement in Manitoba, which allegedly was supposed to have a bunch of Native people buried underneath it, and they didn't find anything, which makes the third such excavation in Canada where that's happened, where they after they start doing the exhuming, they don't actually find anything. The response that I saw when I saw the YouTube video of it this afternoon, I mean, like you keep hearing about these atrocities and all of these natives that were killed and buried in these basements and whatever, and that they're going to get to the bottom of it, and they're going to start exhuming these people and giving them the proper burial, and they're not finding anything. And instead of going, oh wow, god damn it, man, what a relief, like I actually saw like the chief of this particular reserve, like he was actually disappointed and pissed that they didn't find anybody. All right. Now, does that mean that they won't find something? They might down the line. They still haven't gotten around to Kamloops yet. They will eventually get around to Kamloops. But we have actually covered the issue of the fact that certain people within the community, once they started doing these excavations, these medical excavations for autopsy and so on and so forth, that they didn't find anything. I'm finding it very, very curious that now they want all conversation about this to be considered hate speech in Canada. So, yeah, that we really, just like you have to start investigating the issue that, by being born male, you suddenly have a foot up on everybody. You do have if it involves labor or involves a dangerous job where strength is required, yeah. Like you don't see very many female bricklayers, you don't see very many female laborers, etc., 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 right? This whole, and I mean, back in the 60s, when they actually had when they brought that in, that was actually a good idea, and I was in favor of it. What it has turned into, though, and I'm seeing this happen over and over and over and over and over again, is that, they've turned it from something that was supposed to lift people up into something of a cudgel. That it's not about equal opportunity now, it's about revenge. And it's about revenge for people that didn't participate in it. Now, the excuse that I keep hearing about this is that, oh, well, that person's great-great-grandfather or grandfather or great-grandfather, whatever, that person might have owned slaves. And it's like, yeah, well, the person standing right in front of you didn't. The person in front of you, more than likely, for instance, when I grew up, I mean, the Klan was still a legitimate issue. There was still, like, now they would be called actual alt-right white supremacists. There were still some very dangerous white supremacist groups around in the 80s and early 90s. Oklahoma City is a prime example of that, right? So yeah, this was not that far back. So the people who are currently in their late 40s, early in their 50s, and in their early 60s, and going on and so forth, they're familiar with that particular type of element. And I have met people who are of that particular type of element. Hell, I mean, you could make a very strong argument that there was a certain individual who used to appear regularly on this program who would fall into that area. That that whole policy, and I'm trying to remember what the hell what it was called. It just seems to have escaped my mind. Um, affirmative action. That whole affirmative action policy, that was a great idea back in the 60s. You know, um, as it's gone on, as generations have come along, as it has become exceedingly and unfashionable to be a bigot, you know, um, that white supremacist faction in the United States has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. It hasn't disappeared. Both V and I can definitely attest to that. All you need merely do is go over to Gab, and they are alive and well over there. The whole situation, though, is that, you know, racism applies to everyone. Okay? I mean, I myself didn't really particularly care what somebody's race was, or he would not have even noticed, for that matter, until Antifa and BLM started making all the noise they made back in 2020. Now, I mean, when I look at commercials on TV, like, you don't like, or you, for instance, if you go to Google and you type in white couples, it will be mixed race couples. But if you go black couples, Asian couples, it will just show black or Asian couples. I can't remember the last time I saw a straight white couple on a commercial, like, ever on television at this point. You know, and this, and yet you can bring up all the historical examples, and you can bring up and also, yeah, it kind of fucking sucks, because I know what it's like walking into a fucking store and being targeted just because of my race. I'm like you, V, been there, done that. I know what that's like. However, at the same time, I have also seen it from the other side. And I can tell you, at least where I live, the amount of crime committed by the Native American population where I live is way out of proportion of the actual percentage of population. And that is the same with the African American population in the United States. Right? So, how much of that is racism and how much of that is actually just people being alert, right? Because, I mean, when I was on the job, and I will go to my grave swearing this, I was not targeting people because of their race, but at least half the people I caught shoplifting out of the stores that I was at were Native American. So it's become, I hate to say this, but, like, two wrongs don't make a right. And if this is about revenge or writing the past, well, you're trying to write the past with people that didn't actually participate. No, that's just, it's just Best Buy tonight. That's it. We're just doing the Best Buy thing tonight. But yeah, we're just doing, this is an emergency. I would call it emergency. This is just a special podcast. We're probably maybe only going to go about an hour and a half. It's just our recon mission to Best Buy that we did over the past 3 or 4 days here. So yeah, this is if you're going to make this about revenge, right? It's, they're going to start to notice, and there are more of them than there are of us. I would rather just, and trust me, Matt, like I just talked about when I just talked about the fact that they've done another excavation here on one of the reservations and didn't find anything. Like, I mean, I know about some of the really bad, like, sexual won't necessarily call sexual trafficking, but pedophilia and all of the cultural bias and everything else that happened at the residential schools. I am very aware of all of that stuff that happened. I heard about it. I had relatives. I had a couple of relatives that were in those residential schools, although apparently the school they went to didn't do anything to them. The whole issue here is that two wrongs don't make a right, and racism is racism, regardless of who it's done to. And if it's still racism if it's directed towards whites. And I'm going to also point out something here. Like I said, at least in Edmonton, they weren't hiring African Americans either. Right? They hired a few more down in Calgary, but they weren't hiring blacks or natives at those Best Buys either, for the most part. Although apparently, the couple of black guys that I did see were actually working for Geek Squad. So, with that, I am going to. Who wants to go next, V or Rhyrcyn? Don't all speak up at once.
Well, I'm actually curious as to why this recon mission to start with, but I'll say, with the history of Best Buy, I'm actually surprised they're still around. I mean, with Radio Shack, Circuit City, these companies disappearing because of Amazon and the ability to buy stuff online. I'm actually surprised. That might have something to actually do with it. I mean, just to keep their company alive, might need to start hiring some minorities.
Corporate Casket did a really good story on Radio Shack. Radio Shack,
being Illuminati.
Yeah, the Radio Shack didn't respond to the market fast enough. I don't know what happened with Circuit City. I think Circuit City may have been bought. Well, I mean, Future Shop was bought up by somebody too. Yeah, these are also entry-level jobs, but I'm going to just, like I said, like not everybody is like that myth, that white myth, that every single that white privilege, that every male white person born in North America gets $70 skillion on a gold-plated shitter the moment they were born just for being white. Like, that's something that has to play into this. Like, there are whites looking for entry-level positions too, and most of them are not. I mean, this is probably more of a class-based thing as well. Like, you don't see a lot of rich kids working at Best Buy. So yeah, what Rhyrcyn was talking about, saying that that maybe they're hiring a lot of immigrants because they're the only ones that are applying. That's a possibility. That would probably might be the case down in Calgary. The only thing is though is that the stores in Edmonton were like overwhelmingly East Indian. Like, there was not a single. I did not see. I think I saw one actual Oriental on the floor, and I saw maybe three African Americans. So they weren't high. They were not only not hiring whites, they weren't fucking hiring anybody other than East Indians. It was a little bit more mixed down in Calgary, but there was still a significant East Indian majority working in the stores in Calgary. The only store that didn't have that happen was the one in Red Deer. And the only reason Red Deer didn't have it is because, I mean, one of the nicknames for Red Deer, Alberta is Redneck, Alberta. And it's probably about 85 to 90% white. So, yeah, kind of hard to do minority hiring.
Also, a lot of the tech stuff is going by way of minorities.
Well, India in particular, yeah. I mean, this is not conclusive. This is definitely not conclusive, what we did. But we did it just simply because, what happened is, there's a clear, at least in Edmonton anyway, there's a clear example of them not showing a distinct preference for one distinct group, which again is kind of, and you can, oh yeah, let's not forget tribalism as well and nepotism. So I mean, there's not just one factor involved here, but given Best Buy's decision to hire to bring in a management training company that is knowingly excluding whites from their program, this kind of just tied in with what I saw happening in my area with Best Buy. And Rhyrcyn, you've been kind of quiet, so
hold on. I mean, but what I was trying to say is that, I mean, for example, I wish I could bring my business partner, Roger Landry, on to the show here. He's ex DoD, did tech repair for 30 years. He actually started the Geek Squad with Best Buy. So I wish if I had further notice of the subject, I probably would have had him at least record something for us. But I from what he's told me, I think it's, I mean, especially when he has tech support, it's a lot easier to pay a lot less for people who are willing to be more eager and to become more knowledgeable about their field. It's more expensive to hire white people in this situation than it would be minorities.
yeah, that's probably because of economics. But yeah, Rhyrcyn, you've been really quiet. Rhyrcyn.
Yeah, of course I'm quiet. I'm waiting for the two of you to fucking stop flapping your gums. God damn it. Okay. I don't honestly know what more to add to this whole thing. I mean, the excursion, if you're wondering, V, kind of came down to an excuse to come down to Calgary for the two of us to see each other. I'm pretty sure that's somewhere within Naroki's logic.
Oh, that was part of it, but continue.
Yeah. And it came down to Best Buy being, well, someone blowing the whistle on Best Buy with their managerial hiring practices. So, for whatever reason or another, there seems to be this need for karma to be still being dished out, and for God, I mean, this really just feels like it's going to be no different than the bloody freaking Scottish feuds, one Scottish feud anyway, that finally was put to rest. I don't even know what the family names are anymore. It doesn't matter. But it was something that was said a long enough time ago. And
the Campbells and the McDonald's, but continue.
Yeah, so that's finally been put to rest. So, I mean...
Not the Hatfields and the McCoys?
No, that was Kentucky.
I was going to say wrong fucking country, man, but
all right,
I'm not going to say the obvious.
That's probably the American version. Yeah, all right.
All right. If that's what you're going to remember it as, great. We'll go with that. Anyway, just fuck. As Naroki pointed out, I mean, if you want to be talking about this whole white privilege thing, yeah, I don't feel that I deserve to be living in fucking social housing. I shouldn't be living here. But I accept the responsibility of my actions in the past that has brought me to this point in my life. And I'm actually not angry about it. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to live here anymore. And I'm taking steps to get out, but I'm the one at the end of the day has to take myself out of this whole situation. Now, again, just because of the, I think it will be, we talked about this before, but I mean, Calgary will be the first Detroit of Canada, the way things are going. But that's neither here nor there, and it really honestly doesn't matter. At the end of the day, with Best Buy, I go there if I have to, but I normally don't. Again, I will happily go to my old employer, which is now a national chain. Has he gone up to... He hasn't reached Quebec yet, and I think he might be in Halifax. So yeah, he's pretty much end to end. Very busy, but the people that he hires they know their stuff, and if he feels a good vibe with them, and that's how he hires people, that's what he goes with. Excuse me. Actually, no. What you were just talking about before as well too. There was a guy that I knew. His name was Danny, white guy, and he was working at a Tim Hortons cleaning. No, McDonald's. He was cleaning McDonald's, and I think it was the one. Yeah, it was the one I believe in. That's in Motel Village, if it's still there or not. Anyway, the owner of the McDonald's is an old Filipina, and she churns people. She churns out employees. Like it's a mill, especially with the cleaning crew. It's an absolute mill. She was looking for reasons to get rid of Danny because, well, she'd rather enslave her own people and work them to death if she could. Fucking nasty ass woman. So, there's different forms, and we kind of hinted at this before as well too, ladies and gentlemen. There's different forms of racism. There's different forms of slavery at the end of the day. And guess what? We're all on the plantation, but people like V have escaped or trying to escape. And people such as Naroki and myself, we're awake to what's going on. We just haven't been able to make that shift to get out. So all I would say is take this topic however you will, ladies and gentlemen. There's always options. There's always alternatives. And yeah, if you see something that feels a little bit more tribal than it shouldn't be, take that however you will. Well, you make a choice. And as for someone like V, as I've said before, the only way that I could be any more white would be either pure German or British. Or Irish or Scottish for that matter. If I was actually no, you can't get any more white than being a ginger. I mean, that's all there is to it, folks. That's all there is to it. So
the only way you'd be more white is if you were Sheamus from the WWE.
Like I said, Irish, Scottish, something like that. I'm hoping.
Well, you could double down and be an albino.
Well, you know what? I could almost pull it off. I did work with one guy that is African albino, as in black. It was weird, just really weird. And I'm glad he got out because they got some really fucking weird customs over there. He probably would have been hunted or stalked for his body just because of the local legends or superstitions, whatever you want to think of it. But I am hoping at some point in the future, that perhaps the three of us, or maybe more of us, will all meet up at some point, and not in the afterlife.
Okay.
Oh, I'm definitely going to make it across the border there when I get up north. Like I said, I'm going to have the RV. I'm repairing houses in Detroit, selling them. But while I'm there, I'm definitely going to go across the border because I have a couple friends there that said they're going to take me across. So yeah, we can all meet up and go to the strip club.
Oh God. And people call me a dirty old man.
Don't.
God.
If you want 4 rooms,
I don't want to be seen. I don't want to see ladies strutting their shit with the fucking Jello molds for chesticles. Sorry, just doesn't appeal to me. And I'll be honest,
Well, I can get a lady of the night. I don't have a lot of money. I can afford one, so we'll have to share.
Oh my God! Yeah, you can have it. Hey, don't get a stripper unless you want 4 rooms. Crazy.
As long as
Anyway, I'm going to throw in just one more thing here. If anybody's going to, like I said, I'm Native American, so if you want to accuse me of being a white supremacist, no, you're not even close. It was the actions of race grifters back in 2020 that caused me to start noticing race. It wasn't a bunch of white supremacists that kept bringing it up. It was the race grifters back in 2019 and 2020 that actually caused me to start noticing this type of thing going on. This is not conclusive. There's a lot of potential reasons why the hiring is the way it is. Like, for instance, it's in a floor at Best Buy is likely an entry level position, and a lot of the whites have been here a while and are a little bit more established in general. But again, there are a lot of exceptions to that rule. They are economically better off than most groups in North America. However, the group that is currently most economically best off in North America isn't the whites. It's actually the immigrants from India that are doing the best economically. Although, if you really wanted to get technical, and a lot of people don't know this about people from India are technically considered Caucasian. So, take that with a grain of salt. I will say
they're Aryan.
Well, yeah, the
real Aryan.
They're actually people from India that were fought for the Nazis, fought in the German army in World War II.
No, it's not what I mean.
Yeah.
The Nazis, the Germans stole a lot of their mythology and their occult stuff from the Indians. They stole the concept.
Oh yeah, I know about that. Yeah, it's a really interesting rabbit hole to go down. One I really haven't gone. For instance, that movie 7 Years in Tibet, the one that starred Brad Pitt. It's been kind of I've heard a couple of speculations that while the character played by Brad Pitt in that movie wasn't politically or culturally motivated, he was just there to climb mountains himself. There were a lot of German expeditions into northern India and that part of the world back in the late 30s. Because yeah, you're right. They stole a lot of, including, by the way, the swastika from cultures in northern India, which is why Indians were technically considered Aryan and were allowed to fight in the German army in World War II. The issue here is, again, right, there's a couple of everyone kind of looks for a magic bullet when they look for this and go, oh well, this is just straight up racism or whatever. And it's not a one magic bullet thing. There's a lot of factors that go into this. Starting on the white side, in general, they generally do better off, and it's like entry level positions for them are not typically going to be. And I know this because I work in the security field, and we have a lot of people in the security field that can barely speak any English at all. And especially with some of these fly by night companies, and a lot of whites don't take, if they're going to take entry level positions, it's going to be in the corporate world, or in Alberta, it's going to be out in the oil patch, or it's going to be in in construction or something like that. That's one. Two, There's nepotism and tribalism, and I'm going to bring that up because, again, I happen to belong to a group called the Métis. Now, the Métis were basically a tribe of people that formed when the first white settlers came out west. A lot of the voyageurs took native wives and had dirty little half-breed children, who were my ancestors, and the whites wouldn't accept them and the natives wouldn't accept them, so they ended up forming tribes of their own. I've been finding out quite recently that the same sort of thing was happening down in the deep south, although they didn't get as well established down there for whatever reason. But I mean, yeah, a lot of the natives and a lot of the slaves from the people that brought over from Africa, they interbred, and you have black Indians down in the deep south.
That's me.
And they also ran into the same issue that the Métis ran into up north. The blacks wouldn't take them because tribalism, and the whites wouldn't take them because tribalism. They didn't get quite as settled in or form as organized tribes as the ones up north did. But yeah, there's a very interesting history down there that I'm kind of curious to see how much it parallels the Métis and the whole situation. So yeah, there is nepotism, there is tribalism, but you also have to take a hard look at the fact that, I mean, there's this strange myth going around that there's this unique white privilege that exists in that all whites everywhere, even if they're born in lower economic brackets, that they end up inheriting, they get $60 million in a gold-plated shitter just for being born white. That doesn't happen. People are people, and everybody has to suffer in their own way. And if you're from the whites from the lower economic bracket, and by the way, this is not so well known about the Emancipation Proclamation, but the Emancipation Proclamation also applied to indentured servitude, which wasn't as much of a problem as, say, slavery was down in the Deep South. But there were a huge, in particular in around Boston and New York, there were a lot of people over. And also out in the Virginias, there were a lot of Irish that came over and were basically, and it's a different form of slavery, as in you agree to work for this person for a certain amount of time, and then after you work for them for a certain amount of time, you're granted your freedom. There were some abuses going on there as well. So yeah, that part is not so well known about the Emancipation Proclamation when it was passed. The Emancipation Act. So yeah, they weren't slaves, as in working on the plantation, but there were actually white slaves. They were indentured servants in the United States at the time. It's not so well known. Of course, there weren't nearly as many of them as there was down in the South, obviously, but it was there. So yeah, to assume that every single person that
a lot of that was debt driven, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of that was debt driven too. Yes, thank you for reminding me about that fact. So I mean, it's not like there was a it's not like every. I mean, yeah, I think if you look back with the Irish and the way they got treated by the English, I think, and you're going to either see ethnic groups in Europe, how they got treated by other ethnic groups, the Slavs, for instance, because I know you live in Poland. I mean, that the Slavs got, I mean, Hitler actually wanted to wipe the Slavs right off the face of the earth. He was like literally going to like work the Russians and the Ukrainians to death if he had won on the Eastern Front in World War II. Like he was going to eliminate, and he was going to move the Germans in there. Fortunately for all of us, that didn't happen. But I mean, again, right? And let's not even get into the fact that and V and I have noticed this on Gab. Judaism is a religion, and of course there are black Jews in Ethiopia, but overwhelmingly, the Jews are considered Caucasian as well. Although, again, like there's the Ashkenazis, of course, and they're their own separate. They have their own separate genetic heritage. They're considered one of the subraces of the Caucasians. But I mean, people tend to overlook the fact that Jews overwhelmingly qualify as Caucasian as well. And yeah, you don't even want to get into the stuff that the Jews have had to go through. And again, right, I get kind of touchy about this, because when they start talking about the Jews, they seem to have a very hard time distinguishing between Jews that are actively opposing what's going on right now, as opposed to, say, fucking assholes like George Soros and Epstein and disgusting human beings like that. And to just, like, I mean, like, I'm not going to hold V responsible, for instance, if I walk outside tonight and some fucking black guy tries to fucking mug me. I'm not going to hold V responsible for that, right? But somehow,
let me jump in with a little clarification here. So you talk about the Ashkenazi Jew. You gotta also add in the Khazarian Jew. These are the people who literally come from Europe, have no African blood ties. I mean, zero. These are the people who have adopted, once again, somebody else's culture and religion, and to have a right of claim to something that's not theirs. You have the Israelites, the real Israelites, the Hebrew, the ones that are dark skinned in Africa, and then you have the Jewish. Notice it's Jewish. Ish. It's that way for a reason. But go ahead.
Yeah, so this far right crowd, and V has encountered them on Gab for the most part, although there's a few of them on Minds as well. They seem to have a hard time distinguishing between. They seem to find Jews behind every single blade of grass. For instance, one of the key organizers for the trucker convoy in Canada last year happened to be Jewish, right? And that was enough of a reason why a lot of the alt-right didn't get behind the convoy, although the Canadian government desperately tried to play off the protesters as white supremacists. Well, the actual white supremacists weren't actually there, because one of the organizers was Jewish. And in fact, not only was he Jewish, but he was also gay to boot. So, that was there was, like, I remember seeing stuff on Gavin Mind saying, no, don't get behind the convoy, because one of them is the organizers. So they had to actually manufacture. They had to manufacture Nazis and white supremacists for that event, and we're not even gonna go down that rabbit hole tonight. Suffice to say, we got a couple of really interesting data points. I'm going to say Edmonton more than Calgary is engaged, because, I mean, I will say this: Edmonton there were very few whites, but also very few African Americans, very few Filipinos, very few no Native Americans. Like, it was like Edmonton for Best Buy was Browntown. Calgary was a little bit more mixed. But again, right, and this will be the last point before I let you two guys have the final word on this. Like, is this, because I mean, I got to point out, like, 18-year-old white guys still need entry-level jobs just as badly as the next person, right? And some of them don't want to go work up, at least in Alberta. Some of them don't want to work in the oil patch. A lot of them don't want to work construction. Some of them want to work in tech, or some of them want to work in a field. That's the sort of thing. And I think if they start engaging in this race-based hiring policy in the corporate world across the board, they're going to piss people off pretty quickly. Now, I don't know whether this is just Best Buy. Well, is this just Best Buy, or is this happening with all of the corporate stores that exist in Canada and the US? And that is something that they're going to have to address, because I mean, I'm sorry, the guilt angle on a lot of people of European heritage is starting to not work anymore. And it's starting to not work because, well, again, right, the people of European heritage that are alive now did not own slaves, have been raised in an environment where they understand that racism is not a cool thing to do. There are exceptions, of course. So it's like, and yet they still keep getting beaten over the club. Well, I can tell you what happens if you do that long enough, because I also happen to be an atheist. And you get sick and tired of fundamentalist Christians waving their Bible around and trying to smash you over the head with it and trying to threaten you that you're going to go to hell if you don't accept Jesus. Like, I mean, yeah, there are people who are atheists that are just like, they absolutely Christianity, because I mean, they grew up and they were having the shit clubbed over the head with them all the time, and it was sort of like, and it's like, it's like, fuck off, and it's like they won't fuck off, and now they're just pissed off. And the process of getting past that anger and getting on with your life is something that it's a skill you have to learn. It's not something you have to get past. But once the level of anger reaches a certain critical mass, I don't want to be anywhere near the backlash when it happens. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to V and Rhyrcyn, and we're going to take this show out.
Well, I hope there's going to be a lot of people pissed off, because if there aren't a lot of people pissed off, then that means no positive change is being made. There are just some people who have to let go of their
anger.
Move past. I was going to say conservative ways, which I'm not going to say all conservatives are racists. In fact, most are not, I would believe, but it's so much systematic
the far right,
racism.
Yeah, the far right, definitely. You'll get no disagreement with me there. Absolutely.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's systematic racism, and the only way systematic racism can be addressed is to deal with it systematically, and that means in putting policies that can offset, like you're saying, the nepotism or the classism. There's people already who have a foothold into everything, so it's time for. This is the new world order. And I know a lot of people are going to be very angry at me if they dig up this episode and hear me, but this is the new world order. This is the freaking imperial. People need to get ready for it. The only way for the new world order, the secret oligarchy that holds power today is going to get even more money and power, is they have to break down the other systems which hold money and power. So racism, that's like the last bastion. here. Having the favored white race, there's just too many of you out there. There's too many Caucasians. This planet is. They want to say, yeah, it's more Chinese, but there's so many Caucasian people. There's Caucasian people anywhere you go on the planet. Okay, and just everywhere. There's billions of you. Okay, to have that race of people have a higher class than everybody else in the world is not working. It's not working out financially for New World Order. So even white people now have to be brought down, made like everybody else. Guess what? Everyone want to talk about a nigga, you're white trash. Guess what? You could be white as long as you're making under $24,000 a year. Guess what? You use a nigga too. It doesn't matter. Everybody's being put on the same level, and when you eradicate a class, everybody above that class becomes richer and more powerful. Same concept. Yeah, okay, let me just use different words for it. Eradicating the middle class, which we see the middle class shrinking more and more every day. So guess what? You're getting more slaves at the bottom, and yet more powerful, more richer people at the top.
The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, skin color, it doesn't matter anymore because there's too many people to give that privilege. It's too many. It's not economically sound. So the only color that matters now is green. And who's willing to be a cutthroat for it?
I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. That's why its color's green.
All right. Yeah. All right. I'm passing on.
It was aliens. It was those damn aliens. It's always those aliens. Rhyrcyn.
Not the ass. Oh, well, except maybe for purple dildos, but I won't go there. God, I don't honestly have any really thing to add to all of this. I mean, that's the question. How far back? Well, actually, no. If you want to go back far enough in time, I remember seeing art from ancient Egypt, and it was pretty obvious. There was a white female getting boned by the big dick black male, the animal kind. So, and since that things at that point in time were more likely to have more meaning, but I mean, it's still pretty obvious, but whatever. But again, how far back do you have to go for this to be? Well, there was a guy in Portugal. All right. There was a guy in Portugal, I think in the 15 or 1600s, maybe the 1400s, I can't remember. And he is what brought, I guess he's considered the founder, shall we say, of this whole. And again, I can't use the word racism because in Dungeons and Dragons, dwarves and elves, or Warhammer for that matter, humans and elves, those are different races. What we have is more of a species attitude than anything else. So otherwise, there'd be no way that, there's no way that Naroki, you'd be alive, and for that matter, you wouldn't be around either if we were of different races, because I mean, maybe with modern genetics could make it work, but well, maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? So this word is just used incorrectly. And again, the whole white guilt is not going to affect me. And I'm waiting for someone to pull that crap on my son because he's half Asian. I mean, and he's just as sarcastic as I am, because as you saw yesterday. I want him to basically turn and say, well, which half of me, which half does that affect? Because I'm not entirely white. So,
The
or how
apple
much?
doesn't fall too far from the tree there. Absolutely it
Wait,
doesn't.
Yeah,
what do you
but-
mean white guilt's not working on you? Okay, you know what? The first black person you see on the street, you're gonna pick him up. You're gonna take him to McDonald's and buy him lunch.
No.
To erase your white guilt.
Oh,
Is that the most racist thing you've ever heard?
if I'm not being pushed into wearing my gimp suit, now I gotta go feed someone. Fuck you both. Fuck you both. Oh. Well,
As a matter of fact, I'll even tack on to that. Whenever we meet, dinner or lunch is on you.
Oh, lovely. Great. You only get one meal, bud. That's it.
I'll order like it was my last meal.
Lovely. You're paying for yourself, asshole. Anyway, but I mean, well, considering that I don't even really consider my consideration of McDonald's is that it isn't even food. So if I was really racist, sure, I wouldn't mind spending money I don't have on people that I don't care about, giving them stuff that really I don't even think dogs would even eat. So
Actually,
sure
I
you want
have
to go
seen
there?
dogs eat McDonald's, but I wouldn't subject a dog to McDonald's.
Exactly. So,
So you don't want to make a TikTok video of yourself going through the drive-thru McDonald's, have a couple of black guys you don't know sitting in your car seat and virtue signaling. Hey, I bought these guys McDonald's.
I don't need to validate my existence on fucking useless social fucking media. Oh my God. I mean, Jaffe's asked me, or he's pointed out when I've been on a show, you don't have anything on social media. It's like, no, I don't. Anything? It's like, no, nothing. I'm not motivated and I don't care. And at the end of the day, and this is part of my red pill, with my red pill rage that I had to deal with one fucking woman. She had to post fucking everything on Facebook. Like her insecurities were just absolutely awful. So TikTok, fuck no. Okay, well, all right. You want to talk about? Well, it's not even. No, it's not a racist policy on the part of the Chinese government, but their attitude with TikTok is, in China, they use it to educate kids or to be more educational, more informative, intelligent. What the fuck? What are they doing with fucking the rest of the world? Trying to dumb us all down. And you know what? It's fucking working. But again, actually, Rick, I'm going to ask you about this as well too afterwards. But no, I don't need social media. I don't rely on it. I will rely on it for a form of income, which I'm probably going to get started very soon. But do I use it? Do I need it? Do I live, breathe, die, eat, shoot, shit, fucking crack book? No. TikTok, fuck no. Don't need it. I'm a little bit more evolved emotionally, spiritually. I may have my insecurities, but it's not on social media, and I don't need to air that shit out there. So anyway, I'm rambling on and on and on and on, so I'm just going to end it on that one. So, Naruki, V, if you guys want to put your last jabs in, I'm done for now.
It was since you went and visited Steve there. How come you didn't share any pictures of the gimp suit? What's going on? You're supposed to take pictures when you go on vacation.
I don't go on vacations because I can't fucking afford it, which is another reason why I wouldn't buy anybody fucking me on the walk down the street because I don't really have the money. All right, but I don't.
Your vacation is going to Best Buy.
Rosie O'Donnell broke into his place and she ate his last gimp suit and he has to go out and get a new one.
Ugh.
She snuck
Oh,
in. She snuck in while me and Rhyrcyn were out doing the Best Buy thing.
Ugh. Well,
oh,
that's a first.
gotta
Rosie O'Donnell.
get
And,
news.
and oh well, shit. Had I known had I known it was that fucking fat white bitch, I would have screamed at her, "Donald Trump won the election." She could lose it.
Well,
Oh.
your wife had to go to the hospital afterwards.
Yeah, she ended
And
up having it was an MRI, and she ended up having kind of a panic attack. Actually, she's not claustrophobic, but it was just too close for her to be comfortable. So she's been
well,
rescheduled.
Rosie O'Donnell will do that.
What was
That's
it done?
God punishing her for being a lesbian. No, I'm
A,
just joking.
a crazy orange man bad needs more than a fucking tub of lubricant, but we'll leave that alone. Uh, but again, oh that woman is nuts. I mean, Trump went on record to say that the the woman that won the pageant, she made a big mistake. Everybody deserves a second chance. No, not good enough. Not good enough. But if she's part of the crazy woke Hollywood crowd, I can only imagine the bad, nasty, dirty shit that she's really into that she can't afford to get caught. But they all will. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm pretty much done. I have a feeling that this is not going to be. Well, I mean, this might be. I mean, I did a show with Nihilist back when he was still on the show about the alleged. And I got a point. I have to say this episode because I mean, there had like the white supremacists that V and I have run into on Gab have been again, right? The Jew behind every blade of grass. Like they keep trying to say, "Oh, well, the Jews are responsible for MGTOW." It's like, well, first of all, I haven't actually met them in person. I do know though that like a couple of the guys, a couple of like all of the individuals who met up in Asheville after Duke Lacrosse were actually there was an Asian guy in that group as well because I mean there's this thing in Japan called Kaheke Kikimori, which I think maybe kind of served as an impetus for what was going on, what happened in North America. But and I keep reminding people, on the alt right. It's like, yeah, are there actually any Jews in this gay Jewish quote unquote movement? Because if there is, I haven't found them. Like, I don't think there's a single like I know for a fact that none of the prominent people at the top right now, like the figureheads, which I think would almost technically include me as well. I don't think there's not a single one of them that happens to be Jewish in any sphere of the manosphere at this point. So it's sort of like, yeah, you know, the whole situation just
Well, the Zionists are pushing the ones that push feminism.
they definitely played a part in it, but they weren't the only
Yeah. Well, not
they
the
weren't
only
the
ones.
only ones. Yeah, just like there's a huge Zionist component to the New World Order, but they're not the only if you especially if you William Cooper's none dare call it conspiracy. They're part of it, but they're not the only part of it. So,
Well,
you
having
know,
households coming from one income to now the only way anybody can exist now is to have a two or more income household, and that's ridiculous.
oh yeah, it's you
It's
know,
out there.
That's it's getting ridiculous. All right, and by the way, that is a sign of a society in decline. But anyway, I think we've probably gone over the time limit on this particular topic. So yeah, the mission at Best Buy was interesting. Are they engaged in race-based hiring policies? I'm going to lean towards yes, especially here in Edmonton. Um, is it deliberate? Yeah, the jury is still out on that. I think time will reveal that. Oh, I mean, especially if it turns out, for instance, like say they start doing this with other big box stores and they start noticing the same type of race-based hiring, or they notice that there's a disproportionately small number of whites working on the floor of these stores, and people like it's gonna like it will, if this is an actual policy that's taking place and it's corporate wide, like it's not just Best Buy, it will be revealed with time. And yeah, best way. I mean, we it was an interesting little trip. I'm glad I did it. I would have liked to have gotten to that last Best Buy as well, but we just ran out of time because it was Sunday when we did it. I will be editing that footage hopefully before I get dispatched. And yeah, I will update you. Well, I think I've already updated you on work, but that's really about it. For those of you who don't know, I am at Patreon as Naroki5. I'm subscribed to the Red Pill Nation. Uh, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, MGTOW TV, Minds, Gab, MeWe, TLB Talks, Getter, and that's it for now. I mean, I may even and Facebook as well. Yeah. Um, I got some fairly good news. As soon as I'm finished the show tonight, the all of the back content except for 225 is going to be loaded up onto the platform. So I will be completely full, and I will actually be able to start doing some runs on the social media sites later on this week. I will let you know. I can say job. Oh well. Anyway, I'll brief you in on the other stuff after the show's over. But that is it for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, it's always a little bit like I don't like getting into race-based discussions. Because people's ethnicities kind of force, like each one of us has our own particular story, and it's not something that I'm particularly knowledgeable about. So anyway, that is it for tonight. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will be back on Wednesday to do